So we recorded some data. It was like $5 billion losses every day for the blanket ban of internet disruption. So IT industry is a trade surplus sector. We don't import. We're 77% trade surplus. 20% procurement by each federal procurement agencies should be given to the local IT companies who are actually focused on domestic manufacturing. Right now, freelancers, we support them, but they're not a regulated industry as of such. There are a lot of payments that are coming. They're not coming in the right BPM codes. Some of the freelancer services are coming into the other business services codes, not coming into the IT export BPM codes. So we're actually looking towards a regulation. Preferences should be given to the companies who are actually focused on domestic manufacturing.
Hello and welcome to InferTalks, a podcast where I put you in the room with some of the biggest thought leaders and change makers from around the world. Today I'm joined by a special guest who will speak about some of the most critical challenges faced by Pakistan's software industry. To speak on this, I have Laraib Farhat, who's working with Pasha as a policy affairs specialist. Laraib, welcome to InferTalks.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, Laraib, let's start our conversation. And the very first thing that I want to ask you is primarily about the ID exports. We've seen a couple of years ago, Pakistan's ID exports were, in quite a good standing. And when we actually take a look at the last year, they weren't so idle. But thankfully, Pakistan seems to be now springing back and, is registering some kind of a growth once again. Let me really ask you one thing that I'm sure is probably the elephant in the room and is perhaps most critical to the people in the industry itself. And this is about, the internet disruptions. How do you think they're sort of like affecting the attitude of the investors, about going ahead and making investments within the industry?
So it's a very clear and evident fact that the Pakistan IT industry, we have international clients, and when the situations like internet disruptions come to floor and come to pace, and we see that the internet is blocked, and because in some instances there was a blanket ban, but in some instances we see disruption, right? So we recorded some data. It was like $5 billion losses every day for the blanket ban of internet disruption.
Come again?
$5 billion.
For each day?
Yeah.
In Pakistan?
Yes. And
I want you to repeat that again so that, we can let that figure sink in. Can you repeat that again?
$5 billion each day.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but other than that, we had a lot of internet disruptions that were not blanket ban completely, but there were disturbances where the cellular networks were not working. You see 4G, 3G not working. So that's a very huge setback. We need to fix it. Pasha, as a trade body association, we've had certain consultations, certain high-level meetings with Pakistan Telecommunication Authority, proposed solutions of how to actually protect the IT industry from such internet disruptions, because keeping in view Pakistan as a security state, we see that these disruptions are happening and are going to happen in the near future. So we proposed this whitelisting of IP addresses for the IT industry of Pakistan. So the members that were registered with Pasha had their IP addresses whitelisted, their static IP addresses whitelisted. So in case of any disruptions, their internet is not disrupted. So that's how we're helping the IT industry be protected from such kind of disruption.
But does it only apply to software houses, or that whitelisting also, covers, say, people who perhaps do not have registered companies or working as, freelancers or are perhaps running their individual operations? Does it also cover them, or can those people also reach out to you and perhaps have you as a liaison between, with the authorities, or say with PTA?
So currently we're doing it at a very pilot scale. And what we're doing is we're only accommodating the people that are registered with our association and are registered with the Pakistan Software Export Board. So we're doing it only for the regulated industry as of the moment. But we're in the near future, we're looking at developing a portal through which we can actually facilitate a lot more people. But then again, a regulated industry.
So now, let me sort of bring your attention back to this important aspect, like the three major areas on which Pakistan's IT exports really compose of, and these have to do with computer services, the call centers, and telecommunication services. What are perhaps one of the most untapped areas that you've probably seen as part of your own work that can really be roped in or perhaps relied on to boost Pakistan's IT exports, in the coming years?
So the problem that we see today is, and not necessarily a problem, but this is something that we should start working on because we're already a bit behind the race. Make in Pakistan products. The services that you just mentioned are basically software services that we're providing to other countries. So IT industry is a trade surplus sector. We don't import. We're 77% trade surplus. So what we need to do is we need to move towards the product side from services angle. We've outdid ourselves there. We're doing amazing. We're doing robotics. We're doing fintech. We're doing IoT. We're doing different things, right? But now we need to move towards branding Pakistan, making Pakistan products, and for that we need to adopt policy measures like 20% procurement should be given by each federal procurement agencies should be given to the local IT companies that are operating in Pakistan. Preferences should be given to the companies who are actually focused on domestic manufacturing, right? We need to amend the rules of the PEPRA, Public Procurement Regulatory Authority. We need to bring in more transparency, more accountability, more preferential treatment to such companies which are producing locally first and which are actually making good products, because you see Make in India, you see America First, all of these companies, and it's not strictly a really high, we'd say, protectionist policy. It doesn't necessarily go into that realm, but it's something that, okay, this was made in Pakistan. And I believe that we do have the potential in moving towards that direction. Pasha has been advocating for it, as a big advocate of it. This is a subject personally very close to my heart as well. So yeah, we're pushing the government to incentivize Make in Pakistan products in that regard.
And let me circle back for a moment on that question of internet disruptions. I know Pasha is perhaps, trying to address this very issue for, the software houses. But what's your own personal view when internet disruptions do take place? And given the kind of scale that you have cited, that, in the manner and the scale with which they impact the businesses over here, do you think, is it really called for that, or perhaps solutions like these are eventually durable? That, you have to have whitelisting of certain IPs in order to, get certain companies to work. Why not, in the very first place, realize the fact that these blanket internet disruptions are extremely detrimental, both for individuals and the businesses?
So there are two things. First, problem identification and advocate for the solution, right? And second, a solution-oriented approach. So for problem identification, we've been lobbying with certain organizations. We've been lobbying with SIFC, we've been lobbying with PTA and the Ministry of IT, because we certainly want to protect this specific sector, IT sector, because it's gonna, as we say very proudly, that it's gonna bring the economic deficits of Pakistan, it's going to stabilize it, right? This industry has the potential, right? So we lobby for it. Of course, as an association, as the representative of the IT industry of Pakistan, our first and foremost mission is that do not ban it, do not disrupt it. But of course, there are consequences. There are circumstances that you cannot really stop them from happening. So for that, we have a solution-oriented approach. Yes, we see investors losing their confidence, but the IT industry of Pakistan, the companies of the IT companies of Pakistan, they're doing such a phenomenal job that they're able to hold on to some investors, they're able to hold on to some clients, and gain their interest back. But then again, we have to start somewhere when it comes to the solution, and IP whitelisting is a step towards it.
I frankly have a very different take on that, but I think we can sort of agree to disagree on that point. But now let's come on another question, and I think this is about one of the third largest global industries, and this has to do with freelancers in Pakistan. What is Pasha's view or position with respect to freelancers within the country?
Yeah. So as a sole trade body of IT industry, we want to create an industry where actually the companies, the IT industry is regulated. Right now, freelancers, we support them, but they're not a regulated industry as of such. There are a lot of payments that are coming. They're not coming in the right BPM codes. Some of the freelancer services are coming into the other business services codes, not coming into the IT export BPM codes. So we're actually looking towards a regulation. So we're actually pushing the freelancer industry that are working in the industry for like 6 to 7 years to come out of the services and start creating their own IT companies, right? So right now, they're actually working in a very small pool. They're working in silos. A corporate IT company, a corporate IT sector has to offer a lot more benefits. Like, for example, you get to have a professional job training, on-site job training. You are not working in silos. You have a lot of other tax benefits when it comes to being registered as an IT company, right? So, for example, a lot of tax breaks have to come because we push for it. So we're actually looking to regulate the industry and pushing the freelancers to create their own IT companies rather than working with different clients for like 6 to 7 years. Like, come together, create a company. You have to make this a very formal sector of Pakistan.
Right. And now, Laraib, let's go a few months back in time, and let's speak about the interim IT minister who promised to take Pakistan's IT exports all the way up to $10 billion US. We look at our eastern neighbor India, and its exports actually stand somewhere at 300 US billion dollars, right? What do you think that they have really done in order to get to where they are today?
It takes a lot of good policy, good governance, and a lot of patience to go where India is right now. And when I talk about good policies, I mean consistent policies. India has to offer a lot of tax benefits. And at the same time, they're offering a lot of consistency in their policies. So we had this exemption.
So Laraib, if I can sort of interrupt you over here, again, in your own personal position, are you suggesting, or is this your personal observation, that the consistency of policies is perhaps in dearth out here in Pakistan? Is that the case?
It is. And we as Pasha, the IT industry representation, we're pushing towards a consistency in policies, because only consistency in policies can gain the investors' interest and investors' trust. So we had this exemption of tax on the export proceeds, but then it was replaced by a more complicated tax policy, which is FTR. First, it was replaced by tax credit regime, and then it was replaced by final tax regime. We're looking towards having lower tax rates. The current tax slab go from 0.25% to 35% on the income tax. We're also looking at the exemptions on the capitals and the capital gains and the dividends, so that investors do not have to pay kind of double taxation on their dividend income, because they're already paid the corporate techs in their country and in their location. So these are some of the policies that we're pushing forward for the government to take into account, give tax breaks. I mean, currently we have these special technology zones. I believe there are 21 of them, and as they're horizontals and they're building up on the vertical, they're building on the technologies and the companies in the vertical directions, and we're looking that they're enabling ease of doing business, fiscal incentives, monetary incentives, custom duty imports incentives. So we're actually pushing that SDZA extend its benefits to the entire IT industry, right? So such kind of reform, such kind of policy, ease of doing business policy in Pakistan has to be put in place. So, for example, the single window operation, we do not want the company registration process to be such cumbersome, so detailed, so, tiring that the people have like, it's okay if I'm unregulated. It's okay if my export proceeds are not accounted by the State Bank of Pakistan. It's okay if I'm parking my dollars outside of Pakistan. They're not even coming into Pakistan, because that's right now the biggest challenge, right? So we're pushing towards single window operation, like put all the organization, all the entities, FPR, SACP, for provincial, SESI, EOBI, BOI itself, like in one place. So that if someone has to register a business, or if someone has to receive a notice from FPR or any other entity, it has to come through a direct window.
Right. And now, Laraib, let me draw your attention to another important issue. And this has to do with, a large segment of our population, and I'm speaking about women and girls, not having access to internet and digital devices. The Mobile Gender Gap Report in 2022 actually identified two stumbling blocks. One is certainly, the family support, which is perhaps at 35%, which kind of contributes to this problem. And then we also have a low level of literacy of digital skills, which is about at 23%. Almost a quarter of your women's population, our women's population, is almost indirectly denied an access to the technology itself. What exactly do you think should be done, both from your own personal experience, in order to overcome these challenges and to sort of increase the pie of the share of women that can have access to internet and digital devices?
As a woman myself, I would say one thing: we don't want another piece of cake or another cake. We want the cake. We want to share in the same cake, right? So that's the approach that we're trying to adopt. But I know that's something that you can see in cities like KLI, but you don't really see these in other tier 2 and tier 3 cities, because there are a lot of other preconceived notions, there are a lot of cultural barriers, there are a lot of other the internet penetration itself, right? So the USF, the Universal Service Fund, which is the part of the telecom wing of the Ministry of IT and Telecom, it's actually working towards increasing the broadband access and penetration into the tier 2 and tier 3 cities to have internet for all. It has to be, portrayed this way. And it has to start at a point where we have to stop treating internet as a luxury rather than, but as a necessity, because it is. We have to portray it as a source of income for many people. And Pasha, in that very regard, we're very active on that front. Recently in IDC in Asia, which is Asia's biggest tech conference, we held 2 policy roundtable discussions on the similar topic of how to bridge the gender divide, or how to, bridge the skill gap that we see, especially in terms of women from the marginalized communities, and how do we make sure that their interest is sparked and they are made part of that formal economy. They're being taught skills that ultimately contribute to the already existent IT sector. I agree that the current ratio is below the par. it's really below the par, but it has to do with a lot of preconceived cultural norms that we have. We're currently also working with UN Women to increase that net, to give a lot of other trainings to women, skill development trainings, teach them e-commerce platforms, teach them skills which are actually needed in the current ID sector. So work is being done. I'm glad that we're at least in the race. It's not that we're out of the race. We're running that marathon, but it'll take some time. It will take some time.
And now let's speak about the subcontinent, India and Pakistan. Both the countries, they're not, at the best of talking terms, or are perhaps not having any kind of move ahead in terms of resuming some kind of normalization in their bilateral ties. And there are different reasons for it. What kind of possibility do you really see in the coming future where the software industries of the both countries can go ahead and collaborate?
It's very evident that collaboration comes in only when there is a common problem, right? So we've tried different ways. We've gone traditional ways, but let's go into non-traditional ways now. So my personal opinion, I think we should be targeting the problems that holds a common ground for both of them. Let's start with the climate change. It's a problem that every other country is facing. And if you want to, step into that pace with India where we want to collaborate, we'd have to look at how the agriculture sector is being affected, how floods are destroying every other thing, where socio-economic depletion that we're seeing in the society at the moment. The companies should come forward and collaborate on technologies that would be used in agri-tech, that are used in how to early warning systems, basically. So there has to be technology transfers on issues of common ground. That's what I personally believe. And that's also my take on the entrepreneurial side of it, because through startups, you're trying to solve a problem. So see where are the problems in both the countries that we're trying to solve, and then collaborate on those stages, step by step. But I think we need to target those areas.
All right, Laraib, before we conclude our conversation, I want your quick thoughts on one final question. And this has to do with, we're seeing this specter of great power competition between the US and China, and the fallout appears quite very likely, across different parts of the world. And technology certainly does not seem to be one area that is likely to stay immune from it. Do you seem to think that the industry is having some kind of conversation about the fallout of this thing? Perhaps, on the prospect of, say, the industry itself being able to work with, partners from the United States and China, and if there are any stumbling blocks that are likely to come in future, how's the way forward likely to be?
So, geopolitical threats. There's something that are looming over our heads, but you see China and US, you see a lot of big tech competition, the geopolitics of technology in these two blocks. But when it comes to countries like Pakistan, that are still in the developing stage, where we're actually making our space, we're getting comfortable in that. I don't think so that we're currently should be afraid of this, because our services are going both to US, our services going both to China as well, to Europe. Our current export July 2023 to February 2024 to America stands at $1.106 billion. And to Europe, it stands at around $447 million across 35 countries. So I think we're at a good pace at the moment, but yes, circling back to your point, that is the conversation happening? Not at the moment. We're currently very consumed at to fix our own house first, and then see other countries' geopolitical competition as a threat. So I think we're moving in the right direction at the moment. We just need a lot of relaxation in the government policies for the ID sector, because this is one of the sectors that that's trade surplus, as I've already mentioned, and we need to protect this sector and not treat this sector as other traditional sectors, because this one is different. It certainly is different. We don't need any import. You can cut that. Sorry, we don't need any imports. We're just exporting. So there's a knowledge economy. There's a knowledge economy mindset that we're promoting. So it needs to be protected and it needs to be treated differently.
On this note, Laraib, thank you so much for having joined us today on InferTalks.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
Likewise. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation with Ms. Laraib Farhat. Our team works very hard to make this work possible. And it would mean the world to us if you could like and share our content. And if you'd like to stay informed about our upcoming podcasts and other work, please hit the bell icon.